In this lesson, we'll begin adding detail to our character's hair. Alright, so in the previous lesson we wrapped up kind of working on the open portion of our character's shirt here. And I want to go ahead and switch our attention over to her hair. Right now her hair is really just kind of one big mass of black filled shape. Now that is combining the extra hair layer here with the initial hair layer. Let's go ahead and leave it on here, and let's go ahead and just zoom in on this. Now there's a couple of different ways we could go about kind of creating some of these highlights and shadows that we see here in our character's hair. Over here you can see that there's one dominant highlight that kind of wraps around starting here at the sides, and it wraps around in kind of this curved form around her bangs here. Now there's also some other highlights here on more of the strand-like hair where it's a little bit more spotty, where the hair is actually picking up some of the light source. So let's go ahead and bring all of our layers back here. And let's go ahead and talk about how we can create shapes that represent those different highlights here in the hair. Now, the first thing I'd like to do is go ahead and zoom in here and kind of tackle the part that is right around this area in her hair. See here, there's kind of this jagged shape here that represents the part. Now, we can do this one of two ways. We could come in here and do this really quickly with the pencil tool, or we could take some time and do this with the pen tool. Now ultimately that's really up to you. I'm going to go ahead and illustrate both methods here. We're going to use the pencil tool here to create the part. So I'm going to come in here and let's go ahead and just start out, and we'll just create a couple of shapes here. I'm going to go ahead and create a shape that, and we'll just kind of make this nice and jaggy here. Just kind of tracing around the basic form of the part itself. So we get kind of a spider web-like shape. Now let's go ahead and jump out of outline mode here, and let's go ahead and assign maybe a light gray color to that shape here. Now we can see here that because of the nature of the pen tool, these really aren't jagged points. These are kind of curved, and that just has to do with the settings for the pen tool and how basically my stylus and my hand stroke basically has rendered that particular shape. So now in my opinion, this isn't probably the best visual result for hair. We can get a much more precise result using the pen tool, coming in and creating some jagged points here that kind of mimic hair. But if we wanted to go ahead and stick with a shape like this, we could always come in here and just manually adjust all the little Bezier handles on each of the anchor points just to kind of get some more precise type points here. But in my own experience, it takes less time to just go ahead and draw in exactly the shape you want using the pen tool. Not to mention, it's also really good practice for you. So let's go back into outline mode here. Let's go ahead and grab our pencil tool again. We'll deselect that. I'm going to go ahead and make one more shape here for kind of the skin tone area. So we'll just kind of come in and create another jagged shape here. For the skin that is kind of in the center of that shape that we just drew previously. So we'll come in and grab just our skin tone here. I believe it was this swatch right there, and I'll probably want to go ahead and apply some kind of a gradient to that. That's actually pretty bright. So let's come in here and apply a linear gradient to that. We'll go ahead and drag that color stop down. I'm going to go ahead and assign that one to the middle, and we'll go ahead and drag kind of a more of a reddish color down on here for the sides. So we can see kind of a shadow kind of coming in where the hair is blending in with that skin shape here. Now we can do this, we can tweak this as much as we want. Let's just come over here, grab the HSB sliders, maybe darken that up, saturate it a little bit. Sort of like so. Then we'll come over and we'll make a copy of that, slide it over here, and grab our gradient tool, and we'll just shrink that gradient down just a little bit here. So we end up with something sort of like that, which, when you're zoomed in close, it kind of has a strange feel to it. Just because we've got this one highlight running right down the center, it doesn't really snake around. So we might be able to solve that by coming in here, creating a second gradient fill for that shape, just by selecting our fill in the appearance panel and hitting the new fill button. And let's go ahead and switch this over to lighten. That way we're not going to be darkening areas that we've previously lightened with this fill underneath. So we'll come in here now at this point, select the shape, and use our gradient tool to kind of reposition this gradient. Let's go ahead and maybe rotate it around a little bit here. Position it a little bit better like so. See if we can't kind of get that highlight to turn a corner there. So anyways, I won't spend much more time on that. That is the part area. Now, if we jump back into outline mode here, we've got a lot of opportunities to create highlights here in the hair, really pulling out some of the forms and the body of the hair itself. So, I mentioned the pencil tool. We could easily come in and use the pencil tool in this area again, drawing a shape, just kind of a jagged shape like so, and coming down here and hitting the bottom edge with it. But I'm going to go ahead and show you a little bit longer method of doing this using the pen tool. And we'll just go ahead and jump out of outline mode here. Let's go ahead and bring that extra hair back. And I've actually got a shape hidden here. Let me go ahead and bring that in with a Control-Alt-3. And you can see a shape that I've already drawn here using the pen tool. And we'll just go ahead and begin adding to this. Now, when I'm using the pen tool to draw these shapes, I like to do the shape, I like to split a larger shape like this into multiple shapes. That way I can apply my gradients to it with a little bit more ease. Now, it would be hard to apply a radial gradient that would hit that highlight perfectly in this rounded area as well as these rounded areas. Now, by splitting this into multiple shapes, we can actually, spend a little bit more time applying maybe linear gradients to it. So let me go ahead and pick up here in the corner, and we'll just go ahead and kind of begin drawing in some highlights. Now, again, this is a very time-consuming process, so by no means am I going to go through and draw every single highlight in our character's hair here in this lesson, or even in the next lesson. I'll probably do several of these shapes in between lessons, but basically, we're just kind of drawing in these nice, spiky, hair-like forms here. I'm going to switch over to my direct selection tool so I can use it as a keyboard modifier here. And I'm going to modify that one just a little. And it really boils down to how picky you want to be with this. Do you want to draw each little point with mathematical precision? I'm kind of a detail guy when it comes to stuff like this, so I'll typically try and spend a little bit of extra time on this detail because I think that this type of stuff really shows in the final work. When you look at the hair, it'll definitely have that added bit of visual appeal to it. Let's come in here and drop an anchor point right about here. And we'll bend that around. And just kind of continue going around, hitting some of these spiky like highlights. Now, we're using the realistic highlights as a reference here, but feel free to make up your own highlights at this point. I like to do this just because, I think it's a lot of times when I'm drawing shapes like this, I'll get into the habit of making just spikes that are very repetitive in form. So they'll all be the same depth, all be fairly close in terms of their length. But in reality, these forms aren't like that. We're going to get all kinds of different lengths and all kinds of different depths of these little spiky forms. So I think that having the realistic hair as a reference is a really good tool at this point for us. So I'm going to come in here, spin that around, bring in a spike here. Just kind of picking and choosing which of the forms that we want. There's really a lot going on here with the highlights, and by no means are we trying to represent every single hair. There is a simplification, a process of simplification going on here as we're kind of representing these forms. So I'm going to come in, we'll just pull one down over here, trying to make it through this particular shape as quickly as possible for you. Maybe bring one long spiky one down here that's really thin. And we'll come back up the other side here. Just like so. Bring one more in right about here. And we'll just go ahead and bring this over. Now we can always come in and use our Pathfinder panel to sort of trim this shape back. Now I might just jump out of outline mode to do that. Let's go ahead and select this shape. So let's go ahead and unlock the main body hair here by hitting Control-Alt-2. And I'll copy that, and we'll grab this shape right here, and we'll go ahead and intersect those two. Paste in our main body. send it to the back, and you can kind of see here how that shape's interacting with the shape that I've already got here. So let's go ahead and apply some quick color to these. Now, right now I've applied basically an 80% gray to those shapes, but if we wanted to come in and apply some gradients, being that we've split this big highlight up into multiple shapes, we could easily apply linear gradients instead of radial gradients, because we can use these linear gradients to sort of work with each other to turn around the form of the head. So we'll go ahead and apply just a linear gradient here. Let's go ahead and pull in some value here. I'm going to pull in that color, and we'll pull in some black. And we'll just kind of fiddle with this just a little bit here. Let's take a look and see how that's looking. So that's looking pretty good. We've got kind of the highlight hitting more here on the top. Now, if we wanted to add some really interesting variation to this, we could come in and add some other fills to this shape. I've just copied that fill here, and I'm going to go ahead and set that again to lighten here. That way it's not darkening areas that we've already lightened. We're only paying attention to really the light areas of this gradient. So we'll go ahead and grab the gradient tool here. Select this shape and the topmost gradient. Now keep in mind that these gradient fills are going to stack on top of each other. So I'm going to go ahead and spin this one around here. We'll shorten this up. Maybe we want it to hit kind of on the front side here. Actually, we'll go ahead and set that to lighten. And it looks like we actually did not copy our gradient fill. Let me go ahead and undo that a few times. Go ahead and select our shape and then copy that gradient. Set that over to lighten. And let's go ahead and adjust this gradient some. Alright, great. Let's come in here and maybe tweak this color stop. And we come in and grab even a lighter tone of gray. So you can kind of see how we can add multiple gradients to each one of these shapes to really create some interesting variation here in this highlight. Now, to keep in mind that the more shapes you use here to communicate these transitions in value, the more realistic the hair is going to look. It really ultimately depends on what type of style you're going for with your hair. Now, I tell you what, I'll go ahead and in between lessons create several more shapes like the ones I just created here and apply some interesting gradients to those. But there's one other element about the hair that I want to point out to you. Let me just go ahead and bring in the extra hair so I can point this out. Now, what we're missing here in the hair, we've got the main body of the hair, but if we really wanted to nitpick kind of what we're doing here and we wanted to zoom in, we've got a lot of this really wispy hair, like right here, that we see in certain areas around the body of hair. And we really don't have that when we're looking at the main forms of our hair. I'm going to show you in the next lesson, when we continue on, how to create really quick, easy, wispy hair that we can add to the main body of the hair, really to kind of push the level of realism. So in the next lesson, we'll pick up where we're leaving off here, and we'll continue working on our character's hair.